Welcome! This video assignment covers the first years of World War II. More specifically, the years that the war remained a Europe-only affair. This is early World War II. The Soviet Union faced a possible invasion from Nazi Germany in 1939. Joseph Stalin, to prevent this, wanted to create buffer zones between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. Thus, on August 23, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union, sworn enemies, stunned the world when they announced the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. By negotiating the surprise agreement with the Soviet Union, Germany was able to avoid the possibility of a two-front war if, or more precisely, when, war should break out. A secret protocol of this agreement provided that both Germany and the Soviet Union would invade Poland, which lay between the two countries, and then the two nations would split the territory. The Soviets also were allowed to invade Finland, which they did in the Winter War of 1939. Britain and France both pledged to defend Poland. Hitler did not believe them. Thus, 1 week later, the Nazis and the Soviets invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. 2 days later, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, and this is the official beginning of World War II. The Poles fought valiantly and actually fielded a bigger army than Germany in September 1939. Poles had 1.8 million soldiers, the Germans only had 1.5 million. But the Poles were not as well equipped as the German Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This was the German method of war, which included the use of tanks and dive bombers with quick movements. And the Poles also had to face the Soviets. At the Battle of Bazura, Polish horse soldiers fought German tanks. This battle marked the last time a horse cavalry had a charge in world history. By September 20th, 1939, most of Poland was secure. The last Poles surrendered on October 6th. Following the declaration of war on September 3rd, 1939, nothing really happened until April of 1940. This period of time is known as the Sitzkrieg, or phony war. On April 9th, 1940, Germany attacked Denmark and Norway. Denmark fell on April 10th. Norway fell a few weeks later. On May 10th, Germany invaded Belgium and the Netherlands on their way to France. This was a replay of the von Schlieffen Plan from World War I. The Dutch government fell on May 15th, the Belgian government on the 17th, and then it was on to France. The attacks on the Netherlands and Belgium caused the Neville Chamberlain government to fall in Great Britain. King George VI, whom most of you probably know from the movie The King's Speech, he's also the father of Queen Elizabeth II. King George VI asked Winston Churchill to form a new government. Churchill was a son of Lord Randolph Churchill and Jenny Jerome Churchill, who was the daughter of a New York financier. Yes, Churchill's mother was American. Before World War I, Churchill was Vice Lord of the Admiralty. His counterpart in the United States was Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR and Churchill had been acquainted with each other for many years, though they did not become friends until the war. During World War I, Churchill fought for the British Army. After World War I, he became Secretary of State for War and Secretary of State for Air. Churchill was a member of Parliament off and on from 1900 to 1964. At first, he was a member of the Conservative Party. Then in 1904, he became a member of the Liberal Party. Then in 1924, he became a conservative again. Churchill was one of the few to warn Great Britain about the appeasement of Hitler. Upon taking control of the British government, Churchill said, "I have nothing to offer but blood, sweat, toil, and tears." And Great Britain's going to use all of them. By late June 1940, the German offensive had reached the English Channel in northern France. This cut off the British expeditionary force that had been sent to help the French and the Belgians. On May 26th, the British launched a desperate evacuation attempt from the French port of Dunkirk that included the use of small private boats. The evacuation was covered by the Royal Air Force and Navy. By June 4th, some 338,000 British and French troops were successfully evacuated to fight again another day. The troops were forced to leave much of their equipment behind. This is the miracle of Dunkirk, and it may have been the British Army's lowest moment since Yorktown in 1781. Without British help, the French and the Belgians could not counter the Germans. On June 10th, Italy entered the war on the side of the Germans. The French surrendered on June 14th, and the British continued the war alone. Churchill said, "We shall go on to the end. We shall never surrender." After the fall of France, and after he had taken selfies in front of the Eiffel Tower, Hitler assumed that the British would soon come to terms and end the war. But the British did not. And by letting the British go at Dunkirk, Hitler made his first mistake in war strategy. Britain is the only one left in the war. Hitler's operation to knock Britain out of the war is Operation Sea Lion. This is the operation to invade Great Britain, and it commenced on June 10th, 1940. The plan was not very feasible, and was designed mostly to coax the British into suing for peace. Germany did not have a big enough navy or enough amphibious landing equipment to support the operation. Plus, two things stood in the way of a successful German invasion: the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy, the world's largest navy. The Royal Navy needed open water to fight, and more importantly, air superiority. The Germans completely ignored the Royal Navy, which probably was a good move because the Germans could not have defeated the Royal Navy, and sought to destroy the Royal Air Force, the RAF. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring, who was commander of the German Luftwaffe, personally guaranteed Hitler that the RAF could be destroyed. The Battle of Britain was the first major battle in history to be fought entirely in the air. The British were able to overcome a disadvantage in numbers through the use of comprehensive radar protection, and more importantly, superior command and control. By maintaining air superiority over Britain, the RAF thwarted the invasion of Britain. This was possible chiefly through the efforts of approximately 700 RAF fighter pilots. Churchill said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The battle ended on Halloween, October 31st. By winning the Battle of Britain, the British were able to prove that the country could stay in the war. This enabled FDR to push for continued aid to the country, even though it was a hard sell to the isolationists. After his re-election in 1940 and the fall of France, Roosevelt moved quickly to aid Britain in spite of isolationist opposition. British credit with American banks was quickly running out, and many Americans opposed giving Great Britain more government loans. In one of FDR's fireside chats, he explained to the American people that Britain and the Royal Navy were the only thing that stood between America and Nazi attack. This is FDR's justification for the arsenal of democracy. The Destroyers for Bases Agreement in 1940 swapped old American destroyers for British Caribbean bases. This is how the United States can station men in such faraway places such as Newfoundland, Canada, Bermuda, and various places in the Caribbean, and in a place that you may be familiar with called Diego Garcia. FDR's plan to get around Britain's credit problem was Lend-Lease, that he announced in January 1941. This allowed the United States to lend war material to Great Britain with the expectation that it would be returned or paid for after the war was over. And to sell Lend-Lease to Congress, Roosevelt used the analogy of a neighbor's house fire, in which Roosevelt said, "One does not offer to sell a neighbor a hose, but instead merely asks for its return after the fire is over." Under the Lend-Lease Act, which was passed by Congress on March 11, 1941, Congress authorized the transfer of $1.3 million worth of military equipment to Great Britain. This act modifies the cash and carry idea, as well as American neutrality. On January 21, 1941, Germany again surprised the world by invading the Soviet Union. This is Operation Barbarossa. Yes, Hitler had broken the Nazi-Soviet pact, to which Hitler called a scrap of paper. This is Hitler's second mistake, because it opened up the possibility of a two-front war for Germany. Hitler assumed that Great Britain would sue for peace with France out of the war, but Germany could not wait for that to happen. So Hitler renewed his quest for Lebensraum, or living space, and proceeded with the invasion of the Soviet Union. This took the Soviets by surprise. Hitler also badly underestimated the military capabilities of the Soviet Union. When reminded of this in the two-front war scenario, Hitler said, "One only need kick in the front door, and the whole rotten structure will crash to the ground." Perhaps Hitler should have listened to Vizzini from The Princess Bride and never started a land war in Asia. Also, the Soviet Union proved more than capable to afford a war of attrition with Nazi Germany. The Germans attacked on the 2,000-mile front from the Arctic to the Black Sea and seemed to be on a roll for about 4 months until the Soviet troops rallied in front of Leningrad, Moscow, and Sevastopol. Then the German offensive ground to a halt in the harsh Russian winter. The United States extended Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union. And on this note, yes, the Americans are helping the communists. Hitler's third mistake in World War II will come in December 1941, when he declares war on the United States. Thank you for watching this video assignment on early World War II, and may the Force be with you.